Welcome, brothers and sisters. Mark DeJesus and Melissa DeJesus in the house. Welcome.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome to our conversation where our goal here is to talk through matters of the heart and areas of healing and freedom. What does it look like for us? What are things we've learned, and just navigating through it. And we pray our discussion will be a blessing to your life and those that you love. And I love talking to you.
Well, thank you, because I too feel the same for you.
I, in that same way, yes, feel as you.
You too.
It's one of my favorite pastimes. You know,
I know. Thank gosh.
Sitting down talking with you.
You know what? The fact that we can talk is like saves my life. Honestly, it does.
It's not only mentally helpful, emotionally helpful. It's enjoyable. It's great. So let's talk about a subject that we'll see where it goes. Lord willing, and the creek don't rise.
Which the creek may rise for us this weekend.
The storm that's going through, the hurricane that's going through Florida.
Right. So those of you that are listening to this, whenever you listen to it, there's they said it's a 1 in 500 year hurricane.
Wow.
Which we had a 1 in 200 year storm here.
Right.
But anyways, we're getting the residual this weekend.
So we may get some more flash flooding.
So the creek may rise. Anyway. Mm-hmm.
I thought it was funny when somebody wrote in the YouTube feed, because I say Lord willing and the creek don't rise. They're like, you actually have
a creek. Yes.
There actually is a creek.
Yes, and it did rise and flooded our yard pretty bad. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So
anyway, enough of that.
So we're both parents. We have children.
Mm-hmm.
What is it like navigating parenting while you're working through your own brokenness? And I think that there is a beautiful picture that you can discover here, but it's also messy and it's also challenging. And I get a lot of emails, questions from people about parents who have kids that are battling stuff. Sometimes they're in a perspective of, my kids got a battle. They kind of see themselves separated from that. In the sense of like they don't see some of the battles within themselves that they're seeing in their kids. And then they're like looking for help and equipping, which is fine, but they get disempowered that I as a parent am the strongest voice of influence in my child's life. There's a power that's there.
Totally.
But then there's also people that are aware of brokenness. They look at their kids, they see, oh my goodness, I struggle with that. Or they're aware of their own brokenness growing up. And they look at it freaks them out because we're like, oh my goodness, I don't want my kid experiencing what I went through. And that fear becomes
our own pain becomes the highlight of, how we parent out of fear maybe too. Mm-hmm.
So let's talk today about this because where we want to land and where we want to encourage people is number one, we're all broken. All of us. I want to remove this sense of like, that person's really broken. This person, every single person on the planet is broken. And even as Christians, you are navigating through broken aspects of your life and your journey. When we came to Christ, it didn't just all vanish away in the sense of there isn't a journey of learning and working and healing. And I think that what is the key thing about parenting, it's very challenging to parent effectively if you have a lens of condemnation and shame over yourself, because you'll avoid issues and subjects. And I'm going to give the first one that if people have condemnation, what I'm going to say will make them spiral, is that...
Nice. Let's get into it.
Right? I'm going to start making people spiral. Yeah. When you look at your child, they are manifesting the good, the bad, and the ugly of the generations that flow through your life and your spouse's life. They are carriers of that. So when you look at your child, there are many things they carry that have been in your generations, that have been in your family tree, that have been in your life, that are manifesting, good, bad, and ugly. Now, for many people, that spirals them. And at times it spiraled me. Right? And how I see our kids. But it's taken a journey of being kind to myself and more loving and gracious to see my kids through as I see myself, more graciously, more compassionately. It then reflects on how I react to what I'm seeing in their life. And it helps me to get down in a place of support versus you're my child, you need to do this, kind of like in the authority structure. Yes, I'm the parent, so forth, but like walking alongside of them, because I'm being gracious to myself, that I've got goofy areas in my journey I'm learning to work out, to heal, to change, to transform. It puts me in a posture of relationally, graciously, compassionately being able to walk alongside of them. I don't think that that's how I started, though. I really started from a place, especially because Max being the firstborn, and when he was manifesting autism, it was like a nightmare diagnosis for me, and I was going to like chase it down, cast it out, drive it out. I went into like hyper militant mode of like trying to be the perfect parent. And there was such a fearful perfectionistic influence of trying to make sure that I eradicate any sense of any flaws, because what was happening with him was creating a reflection in me in a shame-filled way. Right. And it wasn't fruitful. No. You know, and I noticed that too, even in my parenting of Abby, that there's certain stages in the journey where it's like, whoa, why am I so emotionally worked up over this stage in her life? I know. And I actually sat down with a counselor and was navigating through this, because I realized, like, I was feeling certain things, empathetic things, but there was like, I'm feeling something very intense here. This isn't really about her. This is about pain in my life that I'm putting on this stage in her life and in her journey. And I need to realize the problem is not the problem. I need to let God do a healing work in me so I can approach my parenting from a less fearful standpoint. And I think a lot of parents that listen to our material, they have to wrestle with that fear factor and how they control or how they get stressed or how they overdo, you know?
100%. Yeah. It's a delicate balance too, right? Of you're in the midst of your own healing journey. You have these children in front of you, no matter what age too. Of you can feel like even as they're adults and you're now illuminated to things like we want to fix it and control it and get in, you know, it's a delicate balance that you're not going to do perfectly.
Right.
And that is the thing of, you know, even on the days that you fail, and we'll share some examples as we go along, the days that you feel like you fail, that you, okay, right. I've learned from that. I'm going to grow from it. And
right. Cause it hits our stress levels.
Right.
And when your stress gets hit, it brings out how you coped as a kid.
Right.
Right. And for me, for both of us, I think there's I gotta get this under control. I can get angry. I can get like, I gotta make this okay because it's a reflection of me, but I gotta see this differently. There's stuff rising up in me. Mm-hmm. Going back to when I was a kid, it's the
right. And we don't have like really amazing references. I can't pull from my childhood of how my parents handled me right. and go, okay, you know, I don't have an imprint of that. So even as I feel like there are times that I'm handling things properly, I still have this questioning in my mind of, am I doing this right? Am I instilling the discipline they need for life? Am I giving them the love and the grace where it's needed? How am I doing this properly? Am I doing it balanced? I'm going to mess them up. Oh my God. And then you start.
Yeah. I relate to that every day, where it's like you asking that question, am I doing all right with this? Mm-hmm. And then because we're all born with that need of, like I talk about the father's love and mother's love, and we need that love and that approval and that validation. Right? Like, hey, it's great, you know? And you're like, am I loving them in the way that they need? Am I instructing them? There's certain times where I go, oh my goodness, am I teaching them this? I don't know. When was I taught it? I was never taught it. I was, But wait,
There's so much uncertainty, right?
What age should you? What time? And then you get lost in all these things, and then you're trying to like check with a sense of am I heading in a healthy direction? I don't know. So where I end up landing is God, you're with me, and I have to.
We're doing our best. We're trying.
I have to learn while I'm doing it.
Right.
I have to learn while I'm practicing it. I want to be a great parent, but I'm not going to be a perfect one. And I have to welcome that. I have to welcome that imperfection, welcome those moments. Because I could even have moments in our history where I'm like, did we say that in the right way? Did I talk in the right way? Did you talk in the right way? And this pressure comes in, and it doesn't create that freedom to let God work and to let him, and your reference thing is very, very accurate, because what is a healthy family, right? I'd even ask that to those of you listening and watching. What is a healthy family? You know, beyond the cliche stuff that we say, a healthy family loves God and loves each other. You know, it's like, okay, I get that, but what does that mean? What does that mean? The healthy family loves God, that you do your devotions every morning, you attend church at this time, you have Christian service, you know certain theology. What does that even mean? So we're pulling from, like you said, our references that for a lot of us are realizing, wow, it's pretty performance driven. There's a lot of neglect, and a lot of, I think what happens is generations can be marked with certain things that are patterns of dysfunction. I think we're in this big wave of massive, massive emotional neglect, narcissism, chronic generational addictions. And we're starting to come to more awareness of that. I was saying to you before I hit record, sometimes like generations can react and kind of go swing the pendulum the other way. I sometimes wonder, are we in the recent generations, are we not letting our kids experience any discomfort or anything like that? We're being we're being overprotective, because generations change, right? I'll illustrate this. We're in a season in our family where the kids ask me, like, what TV shows, did you watch? So we kind of do these where I tell them and they go, oh, like we talked to them about, I talked about Gilligan's Island. I loved Gilligan's Island, and watch that. And the kids are like, oh, let's watch it,
But wait, first, before you jump into that too, there is a place of our reference for back, even Little House on the Prairie. Your reference for what that was in your childhood is amazing. Well, as we rewatched it,
that's what I was going to say. Yeah. Anyway. That's what I was going to say, is that I turn it on and I'm like, wow,
these are awful episodes.
This is cheesy. This is really, really bad.
And some of the stories, my goodness.
Yeah. Some of the stories you go,
I'm like, oh my gosh, no, Abby cannot watch that episode. No.
Yeah, in Little House of the Prairie, we were like, wow, this is getting kind of dark here, where they're heading with this.
Yeah.
I was like, where's my like happily ever after? It was
in my mind it was there, and then when we rewatched it, we were like, no, there was a lot of doom and gloom. Listen, and back then, what do you call that? Not the Wild West. What do you call where they were? Midwest? I don't even know. There was a lot of pain and heartache.
Right.
A lot. And kids need to know that. But no, I'm trying to watch a family show. I don't need to.
So we're kind of going through some of the different shows from back in the day. So anyway,
that's the point.
So Abby and I are watching Knight Rider. So my memory is like, oh, that was a cool show, cool car, these things, right? So I'm watching this with her, and I'm like, wow, the acting is terrible.
You were belly laughing. You were laughing so hard. It was making me laugh.
So we get up to a point as we're watching the episode, and in the episode, Michael Knight, David Hasselhoff,
has a giant belt buckle on.
A giant buckle.
Those are in still, I guess.
Giant curly hair. And to get to the point, there was, he had met this lady and she was helping him.
Didn't he meet her on the side of the road too?
No, that was another episode. So he meets her. She's got a son. and she's got some information about this company and he's investigating it. So he decides he's going to go and put Kit, who was the talking car, into a race, and he was going to win the race, and that way he was going to get an inroad into discovering corruption in this computer company and all this stuff. Anyways, so there's a scene where he picks her up with her son and they go to the race. He's like, I'm going to do the race, and he got tickets for her and her son to watch the race. So there's a scene where she walks up to Michael Knight and goes, I don't know where my son is. Where's my son? And Michael Knight goes, he's around here somewhere. He'll be fine. Right? So then she goes and sits in the stands by herself and watches the race.
And doesn't look for her kid.
Doesn't look for the kid.
That's the 80s, folks.
So Abby looks at me and goes, what's going on here? I go, Abby, welcome to 80s parenting.
You could stay out. We would ride our bikes for miles. And I'm pretty sure if my mother screamed my name, I could hear it a mile away. And that's when, it was already dark. We were out on our bikes till Lord knows what time.
We could have been drug dealers. We could have been making,
But you weren't in the 80s.
We could have been. And
Today they are.
But I'm saying you could have been.
Not in the 80s. I was at the dairy getting ice cream and riding my 10-speed or whatever they had back then.
I'm not saying you were.
No, I know.
You were a drug dealer. I'm saying you could have been, with the amount of gaps that parents had, where you show up and they just kind of assume, well, you're somewhere. At the end of the day, I would hear the voice of my mom yelling my name.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Screaming your name. You could hear it in a distance.
Yeah.
And you're like, I gotta go.
Out the back door. And sometimes I'd be out of the range of radar, that a kid would be like, hey, she's calling. You gotta go.
Right.
And
And you knew, you better get your buns in that house. You had to get in there.
There was so much craziness going on too, where, speaking of drug dealers, it reminds me, there were kids I was hanging out with, they were actually apprentice trained in training drug dealers.
To be fair, you did grow up in the hood. Okay.
It was, if I showed you the area,
that was the hood.
It's the hood. Mm-hmm. There is aspects where I'm like, okay, it's miraculous that I didn't have so many very, very dangerous situations that would happen to me.
Right.
Because it was like the parents sent the kids out and they came back in at the end of the day, and
they trusted you were going to come home.
Yeah. And now it's like parents have identifying GPS homing devices,
You have to. But anyways, we could go on a tangent about it's so true how it's changed.
Mm-hmm. So
generation, before you started, you were saying about how generationally it's changed parenting.
For sure. And so we have to find our, what's the influence of, and I see the wave of overprotectedness and don't let them experience any pain. And certainly we were in an extreme, and there was a lot of neglect. Right. There was a lot of abuse going on, and parents didn't know. And so coming out of that, now parents are afraid. Even parents could be obsessive compulsive. Oh my goodness, is something happening to them? Right. It creates a lot of fear of that ever being something that they experience in their own life, in their own journey.
Well, because the generation coming out of the 80s of being, for me, a teenager and all that, we look back on that now in our healing journey and go, oh my gosh, my parents didn't care where I was till 10 o'clock at night. So we look at it from a neglect standpoint, right? So now we're switching to our kids, where are you? Right. And the world's changed in a lot of ways, don't get me wrong. But I don't see it. We can laugh about it right now on where we could just go out on our bikes. But there was an aspect where they weren't really caring where we were. Right.
There was fun about that, where we I'm going to sound like an old person now. We didn't have these tablets and these things that we were looking at. You just you went outside and you figured out stuff, and you were bored a lot, and then you'd figure out in your boredom how to do things. There was a lot of blessings in that. Mm-hmm. The point being is that we can tend to react out of what we grew up with. We can sometimes replicate it, just, But I think that parents that want to be effective parents, you have to be aware that there's a river flow of your generations that wants to just kind of replicate. And so we want to see change, but we do the change under pressure. And we're not going to see change in our generations under putting pressure on ourselves and trying to do it just right. And I would say that's probably one of the freest experiences of my journey is being self-compassionate, being gracious, allowing myself for mistakes. Because then it points to your kids. And I think this is a healthy message. Mom and dad are working through our own brokenness and our own bondage and our own struggles. And we're not trying to hide that, and we're not trying to play a hypocrisy to you, which I think that's another thing that I saw growing up is the father-mother presentation, and then the kids are like, at home, they're a totally different story. Right. They see it. Seeing that, we're flawed and we're working on it. And that takes self-compassion. It takes me being compassionate to myself, because then when they're struggling, I'm less fearful, controlling, shame-ridden, panicky about dealing with things. It's more, there's a relationship, there's relational flow. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
In that. I think where this really came to a realization, there was, like I said, there was times where, even recently, because Abby's 11 going on 12, she's in that very key transition year. And I'm like, why am I feeling some of these like aches in my heart?
I know.
These areas of nervousness, the sense of like, oh my goodness, is she going to be okay? Kind of feelings that arise. And when I look at that compassionately, it brings me right back to me being 11, 12, 13.
Both of us, yeah.
I would say that those were the most formative years and most challenging for me. It's like, it seems like the devil just goes, there becomes a whirlwind. Physically, I'm having, I remember during that time, it was 6th grade, I was having growing pains where like I had the excruciating pains in my chest.
Yeah, it was where the Norwegian and the Puerto Rican were fighting inside of you, basically. I believe that's what happened. Oh. They were like, no.
The Vikings and the Spaniards
were fighting. Right.
Yeah, I'm not sure who won.
Right? It's so funny.
But I would be sitting there in class, and I'd asked to go to the nurse because I was in pain, and they're like, "Oh, this is what it is, growing pains." I'd be excused. Well, there was upheaval in like my dad's side of the family. I had an uncle that was tragically killed, and there was all this stuff of drama and drugs going on in my dad's side of the family. There's a lot of history of that, and I'm watching that the chaos of it, the pain of it all, and then I'm going through my own puberty stage and development, and in being hard aware, I can see so much that trails back to that pivotal time because the safety sense of, am I okay? Is everything okay? I see fights going on, arguments going on, and that I could see all kinds of things branching out of that, where I look to food to cope, to feel better, where I just would go get by myself, or there was no compass of like, what am I feeling? Is that important? Everyone's kind of getting lost in the pain, or there's arguments going on. And meanwhile, I look back and I'm like, where's the compass of, hey, Mark, how are you doing?
Right. That you're seeing all of this go on.
Right.
And how are you processing it all? Right.
Right. Except I have one memory of one day I was just so overwhelmed, and I just walked out in the hood. I just walked out and just walked down the street, and I walked all the way to the neighborhood school that I went to. And I remember just sitting there in the swings by myself. It's crazy thinking thinking about this, like, oh my, this is how things would happen at times. And I remember somehow the lady who lived upstairs, because it was a 2-family house, she saw me leave and she got out and followed me. And she came out over to me and she's like, "Are you all right?" And looking back, I was like, wow, that
she was watching out for you is kind of interesting.
Yeah. So I have that like one memory of that moment. But what came out of that are the coping mechanisms that followed me into my adult life, because what I needed. So anyway, so I'm in a place where these emotions are kicking up, and I'm realizing, wow, that stuff from that time. Abby's in that stage right now. And it brings up.
Well, before you finish that too, we see what is hard for you and I, as we both have very pivotal things that happened in our life at her age. We see how much she's aware and what she's taking in, and it almost is frightening.
Yeah, she seems
go ahead.
she seems more aware than I was at that age. I'm having conversations with her about stuff that I go, interacting, and there's a free flow, and I go, I don't remember ever having these conversations, let alone.
No, we didn't.
About these topics.
Well, we weren't given any emotional language to even, that's a whole other thing. We'll get there.
Yeah. Well, emotions got lost. And I think a lot of my parents and other parents were very consumed with work. They'd come out of generations of loss or lack or poverty, generations going back to the Depression or just barely making it by. They got lost in their work, and they were all severely neglected. So the only thing that they'd kind of pour themselves into work, or in Christian homes, they'd pour themselves into Christian church involvement. So I run over this constantly, where there's constant ministry doing evangelism things, building of churches, building of ministries, doing a lot of that to the neglect of our family, our kids, because being present with your family is hard work, because then you have to work through your own issues, and it's uncomfortable. It's easier.
It's easier to be busy.
It's easier to be busy. It's emotionally easier to go to work. We have to kind of make a mental adjustment.
And it's easier to put a spiritual label on. Well, we're going to church on Wednesdays as a family. And
yeah. And I'm not saying don't go to work. What I'm saying is we escape to work and work-like things, tasks, doing, because sitting and being is uncomfortable, because we have no reference for that safety. We have no reference for what that's like. And then we deal with all this guilt and shame. I should be doing. So all this stuff is happening in me in my journey as a parent. My kid's going to be okay. I'm looking at the world that they're entering into, the subjects that are being brought up, the things that they're aware of that I wasn't even aware of at their age. And it brings about all this fear. And so the point being is, it led me to sitting with a counselor and realizing how much of me and my history it was bringing up. That moment, that season of my life, growing pains and feeling the strife and arguments and all that, and just not feeling safe. And then I went to a whole new school, and the list goes on and on. That's what's coming up right now. I could just ignore it and suppress that and just keep trying to be a good parent. And it's actually, as I let that heal, it lets there be a grace, a greater tenderness and nurture on me, where as I approach Abby, and some of it was emotionally working through the emotions of those points in time, right? And I could feel such a difference as I let myself work through those emotions, how much different of a parent. It's like I'm not trying as much to be a good parent, if that makes sense. Like trying to be a good parent, make sure I do this right. It's more just living in the moment, trusting God with my kids, and embracing that this isn't going to be perfect.
Right.
And I got to learn to be okay with that.
Right. I'll share a little thing too. On Monday, I had to go pick up Abby. And I said, hey, Max, come with Mom. We're going to go for a ride. We're going to go pick up Abby. So I go to grab my purse and I slung. Is that the word? Slung?
Sure.
Yeah. Swung or slung my purse over my shoulder. And when I turned, I felt my back. Uh-oh.
Right.
I could feel it. So now I'm like gently walking to the car because I got to go get her. So I get in the car and I can just feel the pain. I'm like, this is going to be miserable. My night is going to be miserable. This is awful. But I got to drive half an hour back and forth. So I get to where we are to go get her. And I said, Max, please just go knock on the door and go get your sister. So she comes out and I'm just sitting there because I can't really even move. Right. And they can see it on my face. Right. Max isn't really, he doesn't really care that it's happening. I just tell him to go. So he goes to get Abby and she comes out. And so she was at my mom's house. So out comes my family and they why aren't you coming in? I said, my back, I can't. So I'm talking to them through the window. And so then the two of them start like running around and, Max is looking for bugs and I just want to leave and I'm miserable. Like, okay, I love you guys, but I don't want to talk. I just want to leave. Right. So I get real irritated. I'm like, get in the car. So as they're getting in the car, I can see Abby's face is just like, what did I do wrong? And two things happened. Mom, did I do something wrong? First of all, I would have never asked my parents that. The fact that she even can ask me, I need to like be proud of that. That she even asked. I would never have asked my parents. I would have been deathly afraid, jumped in the car, and there would have been dead silence in the car, and we got home. So then I can see Max is like grabbing onto her. Mom, what's wrong? Are you? So I could feel my irritation was coming out because I was in pain, and they were messing around, get in the car. Which normal parenting, you're like, just get in the car. You guys were messing around. I wanted to leave. Get in the car, right?
Right.
And I'm trying to really be more aware, but this can go into two things for me that can be dysfunctional even in how I'm trying to be a better parent than my parents were. So when they get in the car and she asked me, Mom, did I do something wrong? I said, you know what, guys? Mom's so sorry. I did not mean to yell at you. I'm in pain. I think my back went out and I took my pain out on you guys. You were just being kids. You don't have to worry about it. Right. But I can still see it sitting in them. Like they felt like they had done something wrong. Yeah. And there was then a part too that I had to fight, not overdoing. You guys did nothing wrong. Mommy was being mean because I was in pain. Like I had to even pull that back because it can go into both of those things, right? Of like overdoing.
Totally.
Apologizing and wanting for them to not feel bad.
Right.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's like kind of can go into like the obsessive compulsive world where it's like, we see this moment, oh, this is going to hurt them. I can go into.
Yes, because then I don't want them to ever feel my pain as a kid. Yeah. Yeah,
this is going to scar them. This moment. I've had to work through that. Oh, this moment's going to scar them. I catastrophize this moment. And that's learning to self-nurture. It's like, it's all right. It's all right. And then, because then I can over-apologize or like you're saying, I relate to that very much so.
I had 2 of those episodes this week. I had the one on Monday. And then, do you want me to tell my other story?
Sure.
On Wednesday, we have a very chaotic day on Wednesdays. We both have a lot of driving. It's like an hour. Abby has to go to a homeschool thing and I drop her and then come back. And then I take Max to his therapeutic horseback riding, which is another whole hour, whatever. Yep. Anyway, so when I come back, Max needs to kind of be ready and we got to go. So he wasn't. And normally he is because he's like all excited. And he really wasn't. Like he didn't have his water, his jacket, the shoes. He was busy drawing and he was just kind of in his own world. Well, I'm getting irritated now because we're going to be late. So I'm like, Max, did you get your water? So I'm kind of huffing and, did you get your jacket? So now he's starting to like run around the house because we're going to be late. Right, so I can feel, he can feel my irritation and I'm getting irritated. Like, we got to go. Come on. So we get in the car and Now, Max is quiet anyways. It's something that as parents of a special needs kid, just to even connect with them is like gold anytime you can. So we have to overwork trying to connect to him most of the time.
Yeah.
But normally when him and I get in the car, I can kind of see him sitting there happy. Yeah. We're going to go. And I could just tell he was down.
Yeah.
And he wasn't saying anything. So I looked at him and I said, buddy, what are you thinking about? And he kind of put his head down and he said, I ruined the whole morning.
Right. So then
crushed me.
It hits that. Yeah.
I could cry right now. It crushed me. And I said, Max, mommy's sorry. You know what? I'm your mom and I should have helped you. As soon as I came home and saw that you were drawing, like I should have helped you prepare. And yes, you're old enough now to have some responsibility, but mom shouldn't have gotten mad because I'm your mom and I should have said 15 minutes prior, Max, because really I was late too. So you know what, buddy? We both were late and I'm sorry I got upset. Okay. You know, he was just so cute. Yeah. But again, I felt in that moment too, I hurt him. And I don't it's a very hard balance of teaching your kids, like, okay, there's a higher level of responsibility as they're getting older. What does that look like for me to even let them go through stuff? But I don't want to damage them. So it's like a fine balance of cutting myself slack that I didn't handle something perfect in that moment.
Right.
And I apologized to him. But it was weighing on me because I just, you don't want to hurt your kids. I don't ever want them to feel what I felt.
Right.
But I know I'm never going to achieve that or be perfect because there will be times that I upset them.
Right. It's a journey of learning. You want to see what you need to see. That like if we were to go into past generations or other contexts, it wouldn't even have been asked, are you okay? Are you okay?
Right. We would have sat.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry at times that I'm laughing, but sometimes when I say it, I'm like, I can't believe, like you saying to Max, are you okay? So I'm pulling from my index file and it's like zero data does not compute in history. Right. So we're waking up to awareness because there's been a lot of denial, dismissal, all that kind of stuff, right? So we're seeing it, but you can't just see it. You got to see it through compassionate grace. Otherwise, you're spiraling and you're overreacting, over-responding, and not seeing it for what it is. If we see it for what it is, this is a moment for you and Max to actually connect.
Right.
And for him to see, I think it's very helpful for kids to see, my mom and dad make mistakes and they take responsibility for it.
Right.
And they're willing to work through their issues.
Right.
That's very, very meaningful. In fact, that's very powerful. I think even people that are right to me, they're 60, 70 years old and they're like, I've lived so long and I've made so many mistakes. And I'm like, you just saying, I recognize areas in my life and I'm healing and working through it. I'm sorry. Those kind of conversations could unleash massive healing in the family. Think about all of you. What if your parents or your grandparents sat everyone down and sat there and shared and talked openly and honestly about things that they've struggled with and things that I didn't parent you correctly in this way.
I wasn't healthy. Sorry.
I didn't. And I'm sorry. And I'm working and growing through that. And I'd love it maybe if we had opportunities to talk through in a no condemnation zone where I'm not beating you up, you're not beating me up, but we talk about real things and how they affect. Oh,
hold on, I need
what that could do, and so I think what I'm encouraging is we need to see it, but we see most things through shame, condemnation, and then we blame, and then we spiral in that shame. And you and I are learning to be gracious to ourselves because we're healing from our own, stuff in our own lives.
Yeah,
we're learning to see our parents through lenses that we can see it through perspective, but yet acknowledge the things that we need to acknowledge, so that we can work through it. But it's not going to be perfect. It's really good. Thanks for sharing those stories.
Well, You're welcome.
Good examples. Well, we pray this has been a blessing, to your life, to your journey. I think that the way Melissa and I are formatting this, we're trying to talk in these areas, bring up stuff that we relate to, and maybe you find yourself in it, and you can find yourself in encouragement. And I just believe very strongly when it comes to our pain, the past, emptiness, brokenness, mistakes, we don't stand a chance working through those things when shame is the dominant voice. Mm-hmm. But when God's love and his grace is in the picture, we can look at it, we can see it, and we can navigate it. And God's not in a hurry to try to fix everything in your life.
Right.
He's taking you on a journey. So if this has been a blessing to your life and your journey, consider supporting these episodes. Go to markdejesus.com. You can click on the donate button, and where you could take a step. There's two resources that come to mind for me. One is the Heart Healing Journey. I tried to put in a format that can keep it simple, but yet going to the heart of the matter of areas that people need to navigate in their healing and journey to awaken, heal, and transform your life. Another resource that many, many people have been incredibly blessed by, you can get on our course site, is Restoring the Power of Nurture, because we lack that nurture in our generations. We're trying to shift that. And many of us are learning to be self-nurturing, learning to see ourselves with greater compassion. I think this resource could be very helpful, very healing for your life. But we pray this is a blessing, and thank you so much for tuning in. Please share, please subscribe, and let others know about these materials. And we look forward to, Lord willing, and the creek
don't rise.
We'll see you all next time, and we're out.
Thank you, everyone.